this past Sunday, as we were continuing on in our series through 1 Peter, we were zeroing in on the virtue of humility. And those of you who are there will know this. Those of you who are joining online, apologies. There wasn't really much we could do about it, but the power went out. I don't even know when, early on in the message, and so a lot of the message didn't get captured. I'm not going to go over the whole message. That's why we actually haven't posted it to Spotify or anything, because a lot of the about half the message isn't even recorded because the internet went down. And there's not much we can do about it. However, I wanted to come today after kind of some reflection. This isn't going to be very long, by the way. This is going to be really short. Just some further reflection on the whole topic of humility. Talking with friends and colleagues about 1 Peter chapter 5 and what it says and what does that mean for me. This is the humbling part about speaking. Is afterwards you think, oh man, I probably would have said some things differently, or I would have focused on some things more than I did on Sunday. The passage in 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 5 kind of summarizes in the context of leadership and how we respond to leadership with clothe yourselves in humility one toward another. Like that's kind of the summary point, is that we are to display humility in our church context, especially when it comes to leadership. The hard part about that is, and as I got wrestling with this week, is like, this is our everyday struggle with, at least for me, I can speak for myself, with narcissism, which is the belief that everything's got to come back to you, whether it's control, attention, admiration, and I guess you could put it this way, that the world revolves around you. And, that could look like, really public persona of that you want people's admiration and attention, or it could look like that you are so crucial to the operation of whether in your bit, like that no one could ever replace. How could you, that can happen in church ministry, that you become so attached to a certain ministry. It's like, how can I leave this because I'm so important to the organization that I can't even get out of it? There's so many subtle ways that narcissism can affect our lives. And, in the Bible, we call that pride, where we tend to focus on ourselves to the exclusion of God and other people. St. Augustine said this quote I was reading this week, when it was kind of, the context is, what would he encourage in growth in faith and as a Christian? He says, the first part is humility. That's what you need to learn. The first part is humility. The second, humility. The third, humility. And this I would continue to repeat as often as you might ask direction. Not that there are no other instructions which may be given, but because unless humility precede, accompany, and follow every good action which we perform, being at once the object which we keep before our eyes, the support to which we cling, and the monitor by which we are restrained, pride rests wholly from our hand in any good work on which we are congratulating ourselves in. It's so subtle. And it's such a struggle. It's an everyday struggle. And I think on Sunday, where I would have changed or focused more on is, I was saying things like, God, make me humble. And I think that's a good prayer, because that's kind of a scary prayer. And I think God does that. Or we ask other people to keep me humble, keep me accountable. But the inference in 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 5 is clothe yourselves in humility. And then again in the next passage in verse 6, it says, humble yourself under the mighty hand of God. In both of those passages, the object that needs humbling, which is obvious, is me and you. But the actor is also me and you. In that, we can ask God to make us humble. We can ask other people to keep us humble. But we're the ones who actually have to accept it and embrace it. Like, we're the ones where it says humble yourself or clothe yourself. And I guess when I got thinking about clothing yourself, it's something that's just like every morning when you get up, you clothe yourself in whatever you're going to wear for the rest of that day, and that's how you are identified. It's an intentional action that we do every day. Or else we will live this narcissistic lifestyle if we don't intentionally clothe ourselves in humility every day. And it's also consistent. It's something we do all the time. As I said on Sunday, it's this daily, consistent, intentional decision to not put on a crown, not put on shiny new clothes, but to put on a servant's apron every single day. And I guess I wrestled with what does that even look like? Pride can be so subtle. Sometimes you don't even know, you don't even realize it's so natural. At least for me it is. And I love in the passage that it doesn't really give specifics, like wake up at this time and then say these words. I mean, there's obviously spiritual disciplines like Bible study and prayer and fellowship that you need to be doing and that God works through. However, it doesn't give like specifics, like this is the model you use for humility. Because I think what would happen is if I had a model, like even in this video, say you need to do this, this, and this, and this, then I'd be like, it's almost like you're proud about the model toward humility. Like this is the one that works. That's better than any other ones. I would do that. That's how subtle it can be. Like this is the best model for humility to the exclusion of all others. Today, really just from the passage, quickly, 3 questions that you to wrestle with, that I'm wrestling with myself this week as we wrestle with this whole concept of humility and beginning with humility. 3 questions to wrestle with. Here's the first one. When problems happen, do you accept responsibility or do you tend to blame others for those problems? In the passage, in the context of leadership, it says that you would take it on willingly and not under compulsion. As we said on Sunday, willingness means taking responsibility, as in if we're just compulsory or forced to do something, we tend to blame those that we're responsible for rather than taking responsibility ourselves. So just really quickly, prayerfully wrestle with this question. If you're struggling with pride and trying to, how do I be more humble in my Christian walk? Do you accept responsibility? Or do you tend to blame everyone else for those problems? Secondly, other question. Do you let others get the credit? Do you let others get the credit? The passage says that we are to lead and have responsibility, not for your own gain, but eager to serve. And that gain doesn't just mean financially, of course. It can mean for your own attention and your own admiration, and gain in some way for yourself. That's basically the definition of narcissism. Man, this can be really subtle though. Like, you wrestle with, you just can't let someone else get more attention than you. You've got to put yourself in there. Like you've got to have your say. Because if someone's getting more attention than you, it's just like you need to get yourself in there. There's also one-upmanship in conversations where it's like someone tells something that's happened to you and there's a little bit of jealousy and you've got to tell something even better so the attention comes back to you. It can be so subtle. But these are the questions you got to wrestle with. Do you allow others to get the credit? There's an episode of Seinfeld where George Costanza orders a big salad for Elaine and he pays for it. And his girlfriend, who doesn't stay his girlfriend very long in typical Seinfeld fashion, gives Elaine the big salad and she says thank you, and George doesn't get the credit for it. And the entire episode is it bothers him that he paid for just this salad and didn't get the credit for it. And it's petty. Like, we know it's petty. And that's kind of an extreme version of what can happen. Do we allow others to get the credit? Or do we have to put our name in there? Lastly, do you find yourself showing or telling more? The last encouragement says not domineering over those in your charge or lording it over. Basically, to use your power to tell others to do things you wouldn't actually do yourself. This can happen a lot in our world, especially when it comes to good works in our world or social issues in our world. It's very easy to tell people what they should do. But are you, as it says in the passage, not domineering, but setting an example to the flock? As in, do you show others? Are you willing to do the things that you're telling others that they also need to do? It's really easy to point your finger at someone and say, you need to do that, without pointing it back at yourself and be like, am I even doing the same thing? Am I leading by showing as an example rather than just telling everyone else what they need to do? There's a certain pride that puts the emphasis on someone else rather than yourself. See, Jesus didn't tell us to do anything that he wouldn't do himself. He led the way. He walked the path before us, went through the same things that we go through, sacrificed his own life, took the responsibility on himself. That's the humility displayed in our God, and that's the humility, this beauty of humility that we can actually live out, not perfectly, mind you, especially in this person. I can not perfectly, but that we can strive for by the grace of God, and we can actually try to live out in front of everyone. Thanks, guys. That's it. Reflect on these things. I invite you to reflect them as I'm reflecting on these things, and have a great week.